Rokt helps retailers make more of every transaction. When someone is already buying online or in-app, Rokt makes it possible to show relevant ads and offer content in that moment, like subscriptions, upgrades, or loyalty perks. So instead of interruptive advertising, customers see something more useful and more timely. For retailers, that creates more value from the transaction. For customers, it creates a better experience. That's Rokt, making every transaction more valuable. Welcoming back Pete Nordstrom to the Retail Pilot. Pete is co-chief executive of Nordstrom, the Seattle-based fashion retailer founded by his family more than a century ago, a fourth-generation Nordstrom leader. He has spent his career shaping the company's merchandising, brand, and customer experience strategy, helping guide its evolution from department store icon to omnichannel retail platform. Known for a merchant's eye and a conversational leadership style, Pete champions service, discovery, and close relationship with brands and customers. He also hosts the Nordy Pod, offering candid conversations about retail, culture, and the people behind the business. Nordstrom's operates 92 full-line stores, 298 rack stores, along with 6 Nordstrom local shops. Pete, welcome to the podcast.
That's a really nice intro, Ken. Thank you. Happy to be here.
Well, it's good to see you again. And a lot's gone on since we've talked in the past. I think you went from a public person to a private person.
Yeah. It's been
It-
quite
it-
a year.
and I would think like what great timing. But before we go into that, you've got a major anniversary coming up, 125 years. When you think about Nordstrom today, what still feels exactly the same as it did decades ago, and what's completely different?
Well, I'm old. I'm not that old. So I can't tell you about 125 years ago, but at least in my time, it really gets down to that deal about values versus practices. And I think particularly in my generation of having done this, the practices of what you have to do to be a relevant retailer have changed dramatically. But I think what makes our company different and hopefully, better, special in some way, I think it has a lot to do with the people and the culture of the place. And I'd say that in its own way, that's as alive and well and clear as it's ever been, which is a good thing.
And then the other anniversary we're coming up on is the 1-year anniversary of taking the company private. I believe May 20th in 2025 was the day that Nordstrom's went private. Take us inside the decision to go private. What wasn't working as a public company, and what's actually changed day to day since that move?
Wow. I got time for a long answer because it was a long process, Ken. I think, as you know, and we talked about this before, we tried to take the company private, what was it, 2017, and weren't able to do it. I mean, we, had a big price out there and everything, and it pushed us farther than we could afford to go. And the board didn't accept it, and then we were on our way. So I think at that point, I kind of had the feeling maybe that just will never happen. And since my brothers and I and cousins, we'd only been at a public company. So it wasn't like we didn't think we could do that. It wasn't an existential threat where we needed to do something. We just thought, given the arc of where our company is and what's going on in our industry, we'd be better served being a private company. And so after that didn't work in 2017, those same issues were still there, and not the least of which was just the way our sector was valued in the public markets. And I mean, as you know, stocks are really valued by their growth potential and the arc of what's going on. And in the last decade or so, there's been quite a narrative around department stores or dinosaurs are not really going to make it. And so people really weren't looking to invest in department stores, even if we were thought of as a best of class. And we'd like to think of ourselves that way. And as described to us by some potential investors, they said, well, you guys are like the best house in a bad neighborhood. And and I think the problem is when you're a public company, your scoreboard is your stock price. And particularly as it's tied to compensation through your senior management people, it's the stock price. And, we would have a good quarter, good few quarters, good year, our stock price would go down. And it was a morale buster. It was just tough. And we thought there was a way that we could create better focus if we didn't have to deal with all of that. And I think people that are involved with public companies know what I'm talking about. And again, it isn't a bad thing. And we had a board that was, earnest and smart and well intended and all those things. But it's just the nature of the trappings of the governance around public companies. It takes a lot of time and it takes money. And I think when you're in a business like ours that's evolving so fast, it could slow down decision making and just being nimble, which is super important. So we took another crack at it. Our family only owned 30 something, 30% of it. So we couldn't just do it. We didn't have enough money just to buy it. We needed a partner. And so we decided that, since our stock price had gotten really low, in a lot of ways it was more affordable, but
Yep.
we still needed a partner. And so we talked to the board. We said, we want to make this a completely transparent process. We've done this before. Being on opposite sides of the table is not much fun. Let's put this in the context of what is every strategic alternative this company has, including going private. And why wouldn't we see if there's a solution there that's in the best interest of all stakeholders? And that's what we did. And the board, like, okay, we'll allow you to go through that process. But there was a lot of rigor around making sure that that was done the right way. And I'm grateful for that because even though it took a lot of time, I think it led to a successful outcome. Um, so I guess the only other thing I would add to that is I don't believe we could have pulled it off without the Liverpool folks in Mexico. As you know, they're our equity investor. And what's different than, a private equity or something, they just, their thing is they just want to invest in our company. They are a successful retailer in Mexico. Um, they wanted to invest in something they understood. They didn't want to enter the US market. They don't want to merge. They're just looking for an investment for their money to diversify from what they do. And they thought we were a best of class retailer that was undervalued. So that's how that started.
And they are the dominant department store player in Mexico.
Yeah, they're big. They're good. They're successful. They're a little different than us. But there's, we're in the same business. So part of it is the appeal of having someone around the board table that is literally in the exact business as you. They know what's going on, and their input and their insights are relevant and they're valid. But basically, it came down to, and then we thought maybe we'd have to have a third partner in there to pull it off. And they ultimately came to us and says, look, we'd like for you guys to own 51%. We own 49. We don't want to own it. We don't want to run it. And matter of fact, if you guys want to leave, we don't want to invest. We want you guys to run it. And so let's figure out a way through borrowing and everything and what we were able to do, our bank capacity, to make it work so that on day one, we were the majority owner, they were the minority owner. And that's what we did. And I got to tell you, I don't know that you could dream up a better scenario
Hmm.
if you're us. They've been great since day one. They hung in there through all the legal issues of going private, which are complicated and expensive and all that stuff. And they never wavered. And since we've been a private company, they've been super supportive, curious, helpful, enabling. I don't know how else to put it. It's been really good.
Is there anything that you could point to, Pete, around how Liverpool has impacted operations in any way, or how Nordstrom's has impacted their operations anyway, from an idea sharing point of view? You're
Yeah.
both great operators. You've both seen the movie. Have you taken any excerpts from their movie and put it into yours, and vice versa?
Yeah. Well, as I mentioned, it's not a merger. I think in technical
Right,
terms, it gets talked about as a merger, but it's not. So if you looked at the difference, let's just take the Saks and Neiman's merger happened a few years ago to what we did. That is literally a merger. And their
right.
idea was we're going to take out costs out of the back of house. We're going to combine all these things. We're going to create synergies and we're going to bolt two companies together and maybe run two nameplates. That's not, there's nothing in our charter or in our handshake agreement or anything that's about synergies. It's more if there's natural organic things that come up, like why wouldn't you? But there's nothing inherent in our business plan that requires it. So, it's still early days, but I think what's been good is there's been mutual curiosity. So we've gone down there and spent time touring around their facilities and talking to them. They've come up here a few times. And then we've actually had different groups. So like the technology group, the logistics group, our own private label group. And I think they're just seeing, is there anything we can do? So I think maybe the best example is in our private label parts of the business is, as you know, Ken, from being in this business, scale means a lot when you're developing your own product. And they develop product and so do we. And so maybe there are some programs that overlap and we could just create more scale, which would enhance our price and all of this stuff. And so it's early days on that, but both teams are like, oh, there's something here for us. Let's pursue this. So I think, at a certain point, Eric, Jamie, and I are the gatekeepers of what is it that we're trying to do together or not. But that seems like a really obvious one. That's an absolute do no harm and could potentially be of a lot of value to us. So that I think that's probably the best example.
Yeah, it sounds much more like where there is an opportunity or synergy presents
Yeah.
itself, the two companies can jump on it and pursue it versus having to make it happen to recreate the right balance sheet, which is something that obviously we saw have happen with the Neiman Saks merger.
Well, and then the thing is, I think with Saks and Neiman's merger, and this happens with mergers. I think we're not really a company that's grown through acquisition and mergers and stuff, but observing that, I think it's way harder to combine the culture of two companies together to work as one than people might think. It's easy to do the math about the synergies. The more qualitative part about how the cultures of a company work together so people have a sense of alignment and purpose and mission, that's not easy. And we don't have that problem, which has made it, I think, easier for us to be nimble and to evolve and to take advantage of, the opportunities that are in front of us right now.
Yeah, curious to know, obviously many challenges around being a public company, from the calls, dealing with the street, information you're releasing. What's been
Yeah.
one challenge that you didn't think would be a challenge becoming a private company? Is there any downside, Pete, or did you just thank God
Yeah.
we're private?
Well, I think the downside would be in the deal and the partnership and all that. I mean, it could, if we did this in 2017, there was a big private equity thing attached to that. As you know, those guys want a big return, they want an exit.
That's
And
right.
it doesn't allow you to weather change and storm very well. We don't really have that right now. So that's all been super positive. I would say maybe the one thing is when you're a public company, the rigor around having to explain your results every quarter is not a bad thing. It forces you to really dig in and explain your business and have a solution for what you're doing. I think, we're really motivated because we're on the hook for it. So at least in these days, like there's no concern about our urgency that way. But I can see if you felt like it's like, oh, we don't have to worry about results. Like we've even had people internally like, oh, since we don't have to report results anymore, maybe we don't have to worry as much about our P&L or our inventory levels. Like, no, that's not the way it's going to be. But I think as a mindset, that's a potential downside. The other thing I would say is it is of value to have a board of diverse types of people weighing in. It can get tedious or it could get meddlesome, but generally having different points of view to stress test what you're doing and to bring ideas to the business is a good thing if you have a good board. So, we've tried to figure out how to not make ourselves insular going forward and are working with different advisors and stuff so that we just don't have this insular thing that we're doing. It is helpful to get outside perspective.
So the board that brought you across the finish line to get this deal done, that board is no longer there?
Nope, all gone.
Wow, that's interesting. So
We're friendly with all of them. I mean, they had a job to do and they pushed us really hard and we everyone did what they had to do. Um, but those were nice people. They're and I think they wanted what was best for the company. There's no doubt about that. There wasn't, the ego attached about but about them. It was really about the company. And I think that's what made it in the end all get across the finish line and end in a way that, I think people are all respectful of each other. But yeah, we have a relationship with those guys, but it does kind of force you to turn the page to go to a new place. And so our board is really, it's three people from Liverpool, and it's three guys named Nordstrom from Nordstrom, and one independent director, and here we go. But that's why I said we're talking with different advisors that we know about in specific disciplines that, depending on the subject, have ability to help us. And so that's been fun to work on.
That sounds like an efficient way to operate and certainly allows you to move more quickly than
Yeah, I
perhaps
think
being a public company.
yeah, I would say to your point about quickly, that of all the things that I could say that's a benefit is I think the level of focus and speed around decision making are big differences. And just the way that Eric and I spend our time. I mean, there's a fair amount of time that was trapped in all the governance issues around a public company that, while those are real things, we don't have to do that anymore. I mean, our laser focus about where we can add value in this company. And I think for us, it's guys that grew up in this thing and our merchants and retailers that we're really focused on customers and product. And that's what we spend all our time talking about. It's great. A lot more fun.
Pete, let's pivot. I want to talk a little bit about the department store model. Clearly, been a challenging space over the years. We've seen evolution, and not only with department stores, but with retail in general. How do you think about the future of department stores, and what is driving the success of your model?
Well, I guess we start from a place that there's always room for the best of whatever it is, the best in class of whatever. I mean, in every town, there's the best pizza restaurant or the best bakery or whatever it is. And I think, for us to just focus on being the best Nordstrom we can be, I don't know, maybe that means there isn't a whole bunch of multi brand department stores like us, but that's okay. I mean, if you think about big companies like Costco, as an example, being here in Seattle, they're like a unicorn. There's really nothing like that at that scale and with that amount of sustained, consistent success. I mean, that's an inspiring thing to think that maybe we have a chance to create our own paradigm, our own model that'll evolve and work. So, yeah, I think not to feel like we're not really attached to whatever's going on with the department store, but are more free to be attached to the zeitgeist of what's happening with customers is healthy and is better. But as you well know, I mean, you got to keep going. I mean, it just keeps evolving all the time, and I think the competitive set has really changed. And when I was young in this business, that it was really clear how the business was done. There was wholesalers and there was retailers. They weren't the same. Wholesalers sold into retailers. There were a bunch of multi-brand department stores. People went to malls and they bought things. I mean, if you just think about in the last 30, 40 years, how much that's changed. First of all the brands we do business with, all of them are retailers too. They have the ability to go direct to customer. That was not the case when I was starting. Um, all the department stores, that's not the case. The what we do, build a store, buy the stuff, serve people, they come, that's not enough. I mean, as you mentioned at the outset, I mean, the omni part of what we do, stitching it all together so that you have an online digital part that is seamlessly linked to the physical aspects of what a business is. That's not a trivial endeavor, and there was no blueprint for this stuff. But that's been kind of a fun, exciting thing to work at. But you think about just the level of change compared to my dad's generation. Those guys exited like around the mid '90s. Compared to what's happened since then, they had one playbook to run. We're building stores. We're spreading across the country. We're filling it with merchandise. We're and nice people. And we're going for it. And then our thing also, like, we're in almost every market in this country. There's this online thing going on. You have the existential threat of how brands sell direct to customers. Like, how's this all going to work?
Well, Pete, with the New York store, which is an amazing location, I mean, there's a lot to be said for the amenities that you've added, the restaurants, and other than the product, how are you
Yeah.
taking some of the wins from that store and adding it to the other full price Nordstrom stores as we go forward?
Well, part of that, when we decided we were going to open in New York, we we really needed to get more context and perspective. And a lot of that came from traveling around internationally and seeing what the best department stores in the world look like. And as you know, look, a lot of the best ones are out there. You think of places like Selfridges or Bon Marché in Paris and these guys. I mean, they're powerful, they're good at it. They have a sense of discovery, to go in the store just to walk around and see stuff. And then we noticed they do a lot more with food than they typically had. So that was somewhat the catalyst. I mean, we were trying to out Bergdorf or out Saks. We were trying to be a great Nordstrom and a more relevant and modern version of what a department store could be. And so there's some things we tried that didn't work great and some things that have worked great. And we've tried to iterate on that. But New York did give us a chance to start with a really clean canvas in the most demanding, competitive, and aspirational market. I mean, it forced us to go for it because Nordstrom Light wasn't going to work there. We had to go for it. And, again, it hasn't been perfect and there's been a journey of that, but our business has continued to really grow nicely. And, and we're happy about what's happening there and the momentum we have in that region, that market.
What were your initial thoughts when you heard that Saks and Neiman's were going to finally merge to become Saks Global?
I knew it would be hugely distracting and very challenging, and I thought it'd be a great opportunity for us. I mean, maybe they make it, maybe they wouldn't. I don't know. I just know how hard it was going to be, and I know if you think about how hard this business is, if you're not in it every day with a complete focus on customers and a merchant retail perspective, you're not going to do well. I mean, I can tell you from trying to take the company private, we can tell you this the amount of time we had to spend in meetings talking about all this other stuff, lawyers and finance, and you're not actually talking about customers in the business, and that's distracting. And I think that's one of the reasons why the board kind of pushed like, hey, look, I don't know if we want to do this, and we're not going to let you think around forever trying to figure out because you got a complicated business to run, and we had to get after that. So I mean, again, I know those guys at Saks-Neiman. I've got a lot of people over there that I like very much, but I knew it was going to be difficult, and I knew that there was an opportunity for us to maybe grab some market share, and that's what we've been trying to do.
Well, it looks like with the demise of Saks Global, certainly Nordstrom as well as Bloomingdale's seems to be picking up the spoils. Where have you seen the biggest advantage from the bankruptcy situation there? Are you seeing that in all categories, or are there particular areas of the business that you're really seeing a bump?
Well, I'd say the number one thing is just the relationship with brands. I mean, we're really a house of brands. I mean, less than 10% of what we sell is stuff that we design and make our own label. So we rely on the best brands in the world. And particularly in the designer and luxury part of it, the distribution strategy in the country is one about scarcity, and they're not going to be everywhere. So if they were having trouble at Saks and Neiman's for whatever reason, whether that's how they executed at the store level or getting paid or whatever it was, that might create an opportunity for us where they might decide to sell Nordstrom in that market rather than Neiman's or Saks. And we were there for that conversation and continue to be as this all shakes out. So I'd say just being able to cement a very positive relationship with brand partners has been a good thing for us. I mean, I think the continuity of what we've had to offer, for me, I've been doing a version of the job I have now for almost 30 years. And that consistency builds a level of trust, if done well. And I think that over time, this has played out for us at a time when those guys had a lot of changes and who's running the place, and I don't know what their strategy is. That matters to business partners. We have a big business out there, and they want to be attached to something that's they can believe in and that they think can be successful. So that would be the number one thing. I'd say the other thing is well, there's customers out there. Obviously, they're looking for a place to go. And then there's the people, and we've been able to hire a fair amount of really productive salespeople, um, and they brought customers with them. That's been really good. We recently hired Yumi Shin from Bergdorf Goodman, who's overseeing all the designer business and beauty and handbags, and jewelry. She's got a big job with us. She was the chief merchant at Bergdorf Goodman. I mean, people like that just don't grow on trees out there. And we knew who she was. I mean, we saw her around. I knew her. And when that thing all kind of blew up, yeah, we said we might have a job for you here. And so anyway, those are the couple things that I would point to. But again, I wouldn't want to overstate us focusing on Saks and Neiman's, and we're just trying to be the best Nordstrom we can be, and whatever opportunities come our way, fine. But we don't want to be distracted on a Saks or Neiman strategy. We got a Nordstrom strategy.
I was surprised, I don't know if you were as well, that they closed off Fifth. So I would think probably within your business, the
Yeah.
off-price piece, the rack would be really experiencing probably the greatest amount of spoils from the Saks Global failure.
Yeah, I think that's true. But it's a couple things. Their business model was a little different than ours. Their average price point was considerably higher, and most of their stores were in outlet malls. A lot of them are. And we found that's not the best place for us. We're better in the strip center thing that's located near where a mall is, and there's some synergy in the Nordstrom store. It they just they do things a little bit differently than us. So there clearly is opportunity, but it was also a much smaller business than ours, much smaller. So you know, I would say in a lot of ways, our rack business. I mean, it competes obviously with the off-price guys, but it also competes with the likes of people like Macy's or something. That's a
Mhm.
big house of brands that tends to run a lot of promotional off-price stuff. We see a lot of transfer and carryover from those customers too. So yeah, I mean the SAC it's been helpful, but we're not really distracted by that.
I'm gonna jump into tech and AI because it seems like that's
Good.
you can't have a podcast, you can't go to a conference, you can't have a conversation without discussing AI. But where's it actually making a real difference for Nordstrom today?
Well, I think today there'd be very few places where you could see it show up in a very profound way. I mean, I think it starts with everyone's level of comfort that AI is here. It is a tool. There is things that we can use it for, and then trying to find out what those things are. It's not just something that lives in tech, and then they tell you what to go do. There clearly is a tech part of it, but it reminds me a little bit of decades ago when all of a sudden like computers became the thing and then we had to have a computer on our desk and it's like how the heck do you work this and I don't really need this. And but anyone that said stuff like that, they got left behind. So I mean, I guess we all feel like here's a technology tool that we're not entirely sure where we're going to get the value from, but there's no doubt we need to embrace the possibilities of that technology. So we've actually been spending a fair amount of time talking about just that, where we can really get the application. I'd say one thing I could tell you as an example is customer care. We get a lot of people that call in, because of the dynamics of our online business, digital business stores, and like, where's my stuff kind of thing. There's a lot of calls about that. And our ability to be able to automate that in some way that's largely about AI allows us to serve customers better and faster. And we allow customers to have the choice. I mean, you want to speak to a real person or do you want to just get this because most of the stuff, 90% of the stuff people call about is something that can be easily and very quickly solved with the
Yep.
AI. And I'll give you one example. It's super positive. I think we have the ability to speak 30 or 40 different languages, and it takes like 3 seconds. So if you call in and you have an issue and you say, well, I speak Portuguese, and I mean, literally within like 3 seconds, the AI agent is speaking to you in Portuguese and getting stuff handled. If this was before, it'd be like, oh yeah, I gotta go call so and so. Maybe they can call you back tomorrow or something. So that's been a total win for customers. Way faster, way more efficient. And I think customers will tell us where to go with that. They'll talk about the things that they value, the things that they like, the experiences they want. We're gonna pivot in a way that serves customers best.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear how companies are embracing AI, where they're implementing, how they're not implementing. Is it better to be a fast second than a leader? And I think the jury is really out on that. I mean, I'm seeing where AI is most important right now from my perspective. It's certainly about creating best product visibility. You think
Yeah,
about the PDP, and I was always a product guy, so I was product
uh,
first, but how does it feel, look, how does it get presented in
yeah,
the store? And now there's
mhm,
so much around product discovery. How do I
mhm.
discover product? And, is the customer using a large language model? Are they using Chat GPT to find product? Are they using Perplexity to find product? And how do you tag your product to make sure that it shows up first and or above the fold? And I think that's one very big area of importance that I'm seeing with AI today. Along as you mentioned, with customer service, I think service centers are definitely moving in a different direction. They're being replaced with automation, and it's very helpful because, hey, look, the number one question is, where's my order? Wismo. And if you can answer that quickly and efficiently, which it sounds like Nordstrom's is doing, you're winning part of the battle. But it is interesting to see where it's going to get implemented. I don't think this is the metaverse. I think we kind of ran through that whole crazy time. We're thinking that was the next frontier. This is real, and companies are looking for where to start and what areas to address with the technology.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, and for us, it's not about how technology or in the customer service replaces it. It's how it complements it and how it gives, choice to the customer in a way that enables them to be served better. I would say generally, as we look at it now, most of the applications for AI are about taking away tasks that aren't very fun to do, that aren't the fun part of someone's job, spending time in front of an Excel spreadsheet and like trying to figure all that stuff out. If we could leverage our people to spend more of the time on the stuff of where they can add the most value, and that's probably not just data entry or some of these things, then that's a big unlock that's good for customers and for our service proposition. So that's I think kind of where it starts is trying to see the landscape of all the different things it could do and doing it in places that customer doesn't care if you have 40 people working on this one subject or one. I mean, they just want what they want when they want it. And they want to have a good experience in the stores and online. I think we could do that by having the same culture around service and people and the connectivity enabled by better technology. And your point about fast follow, and that's not a bad idea. You just, we don't need to be the literal innovator, but you got to be on top of it. You got to keep going. I mean, although you don't want to get left behind. And if you think about in our business, even to the point where you said most our business is done in the store, that's true. It's about a 60-40 proposition. But increasingly, we compete with the likes of Amazon like crazy. And we can't get left behind by the things that they can do that customers really value. I mean, you think about like in the beauty business, Ken, I mean, those guys in the last couple years have gotten in it. I mean, we always kind of thought there was this moat that maybe these brands wouldn't sell Amazon. Well, that's not happening anymore. They're selling them. They're there. They're really good at the replenishment part of the business. The prices are good. Their deliveries are smooth and efficient. I get it. That's a formidable competitor, and I get why people like it.
Oh, I think it's great. I mean, there really aren't a ton of big opportunities to improve store technology, but certainly point of sale is definitely one
Yeah,
of them. RFID often comes
yeah.
up as another opportunity to know your inventory. And I
Yeah, I
think
mean, we lit up the RFID a couple years ago, but it took a while to get the benefit of it, and we've seen the improvement it's given us around shrinkage. It's notable. I mean, it's
it
made the whole thing worth it for sure.
Yeah, I think that when I think about the stores, I think RFID, especially now that we're buying online and shipping from stores or buying online and fulfilling from stores or pickup in stores, if
Yeah,
you don't know the inventory level you have exactly, and RFID gets it pretty darn close, you got to carry a lot of extra inventory or avoid
that's
certain
right.
stores that have the inventory, which means you're really going to lose out on an opportunity, and that becomes expensive just in and of itself.
Yeah. I was thinking as we're talking, another example, I was in a meeting last week, we were talking about size allocation. Like the rack, for example, we have all the shoes size on the racks from all these different brands. And, there's really good information about how we could be more efficient with our ownership of inventory to represent the demand around sizes in specific markets because it is a little different. place to place. And we've never been able to do that very well. It's been a pretty manual and clunky process, but you can see where we can really be much more efficient around how to allocate product so that it's all there available to sell. That's the right amount.
As we look out into the future, Pete, growth for Nordstrom, where do you see that coming from over the next 5 years?
Well, I'd say over the next 5 years, the number one thing be the rack expansion. We've been pretty aggressive on that, and that's worked well. There's a lot of headroom there for us.
When you
Uh,
say rack expansion, you're, let's say, roughly you're close to 300 stores
yeah,
today. What is the store opening rate that you're projecting over the next few years?
I think we're opening 25 this year, and part of that is building the muscle where we could open even more than that in 1 year. I mean, that's a skill, that's an experience that you need to have, a capability you need to have. I think we'd like to be in a position where we can move even faster. I mean, maybe someday we can about 50 stores a year. There will be a limit to how many racks we have, but I mean, if we have 300, TJ Maxx has got what, 2,200? I don't know what they have. They got a ton of them.
A
Now they
lot.
are a lot lower average price point than we are. We wouldn't have that many, but I don't know. Could we have 500 maybe? Maybe. I guess we'll know when we get there. But right now, there's a lot of good opportunities for us in good markets to open successful stores. The return on investment's good on those. So I would say in the next 5 years, that's the number one thing. But then you've also got just the comp store growth. And we originally early here talking about these different markets where there might be an opportunity for us based on the competitive elements that we can gain some market share. Okay, that's a comp store increase thing.
Yeah.
And if you can get comp store increases going, you create leverage in a way that's makes this business a lot more fun. So we're focusing on comp store increases as well. And then I don't think that we haven't seen the end of the digital part of the business. Like I said, it's 40% of our business. I don't know exactly where that all shakes out, but we lit up a marketplace about a year and a half ago, and that's been really successful. I I don't know what the ceiling is on that.
Yeah, it's funny. I was at NRF and I had Miguel Almeida on,
Ah,
your president of digital on the panel, and it was all on marketplace. And we really talked
yeah,
about the fast growth, and we got into what was, I thought, a very interesting conversation about how you motivate your two buying teams, your marketplace buying team and the buyers who actually are buying the product and own it. Because, I wish they had marketplace when I was a buyer. The idea of being able to sell something you don't own, get paid
yeah,
on it before you pay the vendor. How do you calculate GM ROI? I don't know, but let me know if you know the answer to that, Pete. But I love the marketplace because it gives you the ability to test new categories, expand product catalogs with up and coming vendors, and it sounds
yeah,
like you've been very successful in that space. So certainly, Walmart has leaned in very
yeah.
heavily, carry over 1 million SKUs on their marketplace. But it sounds like it's a growing business for you.
Yeah, it is, but that gets back to that point, I use Amazon as the context of competition. Walmart is too. You're right, particularly in the marketplace. The overlap they have of the brands that we have, I think, would surprise most people. They got they have access to a lot of really great brands. I mean, they're an amazing operator. They're big. They got scale. They're smart. They know what they're doing. So that is just such a different competitive mindset than again we would have had 10, 20, 30 years ago. Again, it's not to say that you still don't have the same physical competitors like department stores and other verticals in the mall, but you have this too. So it's just there's just more competition, more things to be thinking about.
When you think about other avenues of growth, international, I mean, you were in Canada for a period of time. Any other international thoughts? I mean, you have a partner south of the border, or just going to work on hitting it hard here.
Yeah, that might be the next generation's challenge. I think in the foreseeable future, there's plenty of opportunity to do what we do in the United States. It's unfortunate the Canada thing didn't work. And I got to say, from our perspective, our generation, that's probably the biggest black eye we have. We didn't make that work. That was kind of heartbreaking in a lot of ways. COVID really hurt us there. I think if not for that, it could have worked. But if you look at it, Ken, there literally is not one department store, anything like us, that has any success in any other country than the country they started. Not one. So I don't know. It's a bit hubris to think that we could go have Nordstrom stores all over the place. We thought we could make Canada work, and we couldn't make that work. So, uh, you know, I,
It's
I
very
think
true.
that we'd be well served.
We
I mean, there's
haven't
not
seen
one.
many. Yeah, no, you're right. We've seen a number of French department stores come over here. We'll see what happens with Printemps, but Galleries Lafayette didn't happen, and
Well, the
Marks and
same as the
Spencer's
US.
gone all around. Yeah,
Yeah.
I
I mean,
it's
there's been people that have done some stuff like in the Middle East, but those are licensed. I mean, it's a little bit
right,
different,
a little different.
but it's that scale that's pretty small. I don't know. We have a lot of opportunity just to do our thing here. There's no plan for us to enter Mexico. There's no plan for Liverpool to enter the United States. No plan for us to merge. But if I've learned one thing, you you gotta keep an open mind to these things. None of these are total absolutes. The world evolves and it changes, and we're only gonna be successful if part of our culture is about sustaining the curiosity to keep going. And that's, I think, if you were to talk to Eric and I about the stuff we're trying to make sure is institutionalized in our company, it would be that.
So, Pete, if we were to fast forward to Nordstrom's 150-year anniversary, what has to be true for you to feel right that you got it right?
Well, my guess is if we get to that point of 150, I would hope and I would assume there are gonna be things that have happened here in this next 25 years that we couldn't have predicted, and that we did them because we were agile, we were focused, and we were trying to stay relevant to the customer. That would probably be the biggest measure of success if you could see the things that we've done that we hadn't necessarily planned, but we evolved organically and naturally.
All right, let's go to the last part of this podcast, rapid fire. Pete, what's one small habit that's had a surprisingly big impact on your life?
I mean, there's some things that jump to mind. There are things I try to do, but wouldn't say I have it aced. I used to have this sign in my office that said, "Listen more, talk less." I mean, if we're going to have this idea about institutionalizing curiosity and all that stuff, you've got to be willing to ask questions and listen and be, all of that. So I wouldn't profess to be great at this, but it's something I try to do.
Who in your life keeps you most grounded and how?
Well, isn't the 100% answer to that is your spouse? I like my spouse. If I say
You
anything
got the
other than that, I get in
you got the
trouble.
right answer, Pete. That's the right answer.
So but
What
I will put a caveat to that. So that is true. But I also, the fact is that I work shoulder to shoulder with my brother, and we've known each other our entire lives. I mean, we're completely dependent on each other in a way that the only enabler of that is trust. And I'm super grateful to be able to work with him, and that is having him here with me every day. And Jamie's part of that too, our cousin. That's a real blessing.
when do you feel most like yourself?
When I'm doing the podcast now, I don't know. I would say it's probably at home. I have 14 and 15-year-old kids, and I think particularly at those ages, that's a humbling experience. And it teaches you that the world doesn't revolve around me and what I want to do. I mean, I have a responsibility that way, and I think just seeing the world through their eyes and feeling a sense of responsibility to make sure that we're doing all we can to be good parents. That's a pretty that's a grounding situation, and I think that's makes you really live in the moment.
I would say that kids can certainly keep you grounded, if not on the ground, for a lot longer than you thought. All right,
Yes.
final question. What song right now feels like the soundtrack of your life?
Hmm. I knew you were going to ask me this, Ken, and I actually thought about this last night, and I really couldn't come up with. As you know, I'm a music guy. I'm a musician. I really
I
like music
know.
a lot to me, and so you would think I'd have a real pithy answer for this. I don't. the thing about music to me, a lot more of it is kind of the visceral of the sonics of what it is and what it sounds like, and the melody and the rhythm and all that stuff. That's what I like about music. It's kind of what I feels inspiring to me. Not so much the exact lyrics. I'm kind of afraid if I gave you a song and someone's going to scrutinize those lyrics and I'll realize I had them wrong and then I'll look stupid. So I'm not going to give you that answer. But I would say I do find music. I'll tell you my favorite band for this last year, and I know this because the Spotify tells you how often you listen to this band called Sloan out of Canada. I like Sloan. They're awesome. And then I went to a show the other night. It's always fun to hear new bands. They got a sense of discovery, and they're called Weird Nightmare. So there's my tips for listeners. Check out Sloan and check out Weird Nightmare.
And with that, we'll land this flight of the retail pilot. Pete Nordstrom, always a pleasure. Congratulations on going private. Wishing you and the team the best of luck.
Well, Ken, you're always fun to talk to. It's great to see you and get a chance to get caught up and everything. I appreciate it, and I hope we'll get a chance to do this again sometime.
Absolutely. Thanks for tuning in to this week's flight of the retail pilot. And please give us a review on your favorite podcast platform.